struggling to accept the fact my husband is now on mid/night shift and I will only see him for maybe an hour daily. I, 28F, have been married to my husband, 30M, for 4 years. Been together 12. We have a great relationship and are very close. Recently he's been having issues at his job and he's now been put on a different shift and in a different position. As of right now he works 5 AM to PM, while I work 8 to 5. His new shift will be 1 to 10 PM and he will be home around 11 or after. He works overtime half the time, so it's possible he won't be getting home until midnight or 1. Right now we get about 2.5 hours together each night, as he goes to bed around 8 to get up at 4 AM. I've been struggling so hard trying to accept the fact that we won't even get that amount of time together anymore, won't be able to eat dinner together, and that I will be alone basically all night once I get off work. It's basically spiraled me into a mental breakdown today and I am looking for advice to make this easier on both of us. I'm glad it's not the latest shift, but still. I am used to having hours to myself once he goes to bed. I normally end up in bed around 11 to 11:30, but it's really tripping me up that I'll be completely alone in the house and will have to eat dinner by myself, etc. Typing it out sounds so whiny, but when you're used to doing these things with another person it's just hard to imagine otherwise. Too long didn't read. How do you make a relationship work when you only get to see your spouse an hour out of the whole day? Experiences, tips, etc.? We have a similar issue. My wife works graveyard 6 PM to 6:30 AM, and I work a regular 9 to 5 job. She works close enough that I generally make her dinner and take it to her and we sit together for her lunch break. We have breakfast together before she goes to bed in the morning, and we just try to maximize the time we spend together on our off days. That's so sweet. Could possibly take a very early, for me, lunch and spend some time with him then as well, so that's something to consider. You said you're glad it's not the latest shift. Does that mean there is a potential graveyard shift as well? Obviously there's a lot to consider, but in my opinion day shift and graveyard shift work better together. He sleeps while you work, you sleep while he works, and your free time overlaps completely. That's tough for sure. Is there at least an end date to his swing/mid shifts? I'd advise anyone I care about that's in a profession/job with swing/mid shifts to seriously consider a different profession. The studies about them significantly lowering life expectancy is overwhelming, and that's on top of how devastating they are to families. My partner and I have a similar, but not quite as extreme, situation with work shifts. We try to make the most of our time by 1. I prep breakfast and coffee, choose my clothes for the next day, pack my things, etc. before he comes home. I stay up an extra 30 minutes or so and wake up later in the morning. 2. He wakes up early and goes to sleep early, considering the night shift. He spends downtime partially before and after his shift. 3. All, and I mean all, household chores we do during the week are done when we're home alone. Garbage, dishes, sweeping/mopping/vacuuming, meal prep, laundry, grocery shopping, etc. I also get ready for bed before he gets home, skincare, pajamas, shower, etc. 4. We text regularly and plan out our evening together. When he gets home, our activity will be all set up and ready to go. TV, date night in, Netflix, games, etc. We also have a rule to talk about our day for about 20 minutes and try to include a positive moment, negative moment, and funny moment. 5. Weekends are sacred and we don't make plans with anyone else unless absolutely necessary. 6. Enjoy the time to yourself. Put on music you like, do some crafts, take a long bath with some wine, pick up a game, read a book, whatever. You also now have more social time, so I call a family member or friend most evenings. It works for us, and we were the type who spent 24/7 together for years. It's almost nice to miss each other a bit, and we're so much happier to see each other now. I genuinely get excited to see him now. I work 13 hours overnights and my husband works day hours. We only get 20 minutes together as he's getting home and I'm rushing out the door. Sometimes we don't see each other at all. We text each other when we can and make the most of our weekends together. It's an adjustment, but it makes that in-person time even more important. My boyfriend, M23, is emotionally vulnerable with me, F20, all the time, and it's seriously draining. Edit, I just want to say thank you to everyone who commented. It was incredibly validating reading all your responses. I also want to point out that it was never my intention to suggest that emotional vulnerability is a bad thing, but that was the term my boyfriend used and I couldn't think of other ways of describing it. This afternoon I look about a dozen screenshots from the comments and sent it to him. I explained my frustration and told him that my needs are not being met, that I don't feel appreciated and respected. Here are some of the texts he sent. No excuses TBH, I haven't been great to you. Your needs are absolutely important. I do appreciate you. You're wonderful and patient and you've been so good towards me. That's why I want to try and change. No, my mental health is not on you. That's too much to ask and I was so wrong. Thank you for trying your best on me. Of course these are all just words. I'm gonna have to act like this and change OFC. Afterwards we spent about an hour on Zoom. He agreed that what he's been doing wasn't fair for me, and promised to respect my boundaries. He also said if I ever feel the need to vent, he will try his best to just listen. Of course his words mean nothing if his behavior doesn't change, but I want to try giving him a second chance. After all, he was willing to admit his mistakes and go back to his therapy for his anxiety, and his behavior did change after I called him out last month. We agreed that we should both take a step back from this relationship and start fresh. I also set a rule for myself that I'd leave if he ever becomes demanding again. Here's the original post. I started dating my boyfriend about 4 months ago. We met online, and I'm the first girl he's ever been in a committed relationship with. Since we started dating, my BF has been opening up to me about his anxiety issues, at first on a weekly basis, but gradually evolved into a daily basis kinda thing. Last month we got to the point that we were basically calling for 2 to 4 hours and sending 100 to 300 plus messages per day. I'd often wake up to an essay filled with anxious thoughts, and even during our calls, I'd have to give reassurance to his insecurities. If I say I'm not ready for this during a call, he'd leave me a message with a script to incorporate into our calls, saying we can work on getting me to be more empathetic. He'd also ask me to share my vulnerabilities, and once I did, I'd often find myself comforting him because the visuals his brain created were just too much for him. The relationship honestly felt like a job, and I called him out for it, saying that my courses are stressing me out, and I simply have no energy left to be doing therapy work. I appreciate him for giving me some space after that, and for going back to therapy, and I thought I got over it, but I guess my brain just couldn't. In the past 2 to 3 weeks, I've been having a really hard time mental health wise. I'd find myself unable to focus on lectures, like the words would just enter through one ear and out the next and nothing would register. I'd be reading my textbook one moment and be staring off into space the next. I'd be in bed at 3 a.m., exhausted after struggling to complete an assignment and find myself unable to fall asleep. I had to get my productivity up, otherwise I feel like I'd seriously fail my courses, so I started seeing a therapist. We spent a few minutes talking about my struggles in school, but most of our time was spent talking about my BF. At first I thought relationship and productivity were separate issues, but I guess I was wrong. This morning my BF asked me if I have time to chat. I replied that I have an assignment due tomorrow, and a test the next day. His first response was well emotionally vulnerable, his name / maybe making an appearance before wishing me good luck. This sounds pretty bad, but to me, that almost sounded like a manager assigning more tasks to an employee who's already working overtime. On one hand, I want to be a supportive girlfriend, but school is already draining enough that I simply don't have the energy left for it. Also, I really do care for him, and I feel extremely guilty whenever I call him out on things, and my heart drops to my stomach every time I hear that he felt hurt afterwards. I'm not exactly sure what I want to achieve by making this post. I'm the type that tries to deal with her issues by herself all the time, but the emotions I've been experiencing are just too much for me to deal with alone. My next therapy session is 6 days later, and I'm not sure how I can keep myself together during that time. I guess I just really wanted to get this off my chest. Thank you for reading. Too long didn't read. My boyfriend has been vulnerable with me way too frequently, and for some reason my mental health has been declining, but I still need to get my shit together fast, otherwise I'd fail my courses. I got tired just from reading all this. This doesn't sound like someone being emotionally vulnerable with some anxiety. This sounds like someone deeply disturbed who isn't in treatment / doing the work and is instead playing victim, manipulating, and all around being a needy energy vampire. This relationship is a job. You are literally his full-time therapist. This isn't what supporting each other is about. He needs to stop using you for free therapy and go see a professional. If I say I'm not ready for this during a call, he'd leave me a message with a script to incorporate into our calls, saying we can work on getting me to be more empathetic. You are empathetic, but he is not. More importantly, he needs help of therapist. You can't do that. You don't have necessary knowledge and training. You can reassure him about his insecurities, but you can't figure out their source nor help him get away with them. It is actually good that he is able to talk about these issues, but now is the time to realize that they are bigger than he thinks and need to be treated. He therapist. You went to one when you felt unproductive, there is no reason for him not to go too. My husband talking to me about his shitty father and the ways his upbringing affected him is being emotionally vulnerable. Mourning together over the death of our kitty is being emotionally vulnerable. Telling each other when we're having a rough day and need a little extra love is being emotionally vulnerable. What your boyfriend is doing is holding you emotionally hostage. He's using you as a full-time therapist and manipulating you into feeling like his wants, needs, and desires are all that matter in this relationship. If he doesn't get a real therapist and learn to deal with his non-stop anxiety in a healthy way, he's going to drag you down to rock bottom and leave you there. Don't let him. This isn't emotional vulnerability, the ability/willingness to acknowledge difficult feelings. This is a serious inability to self-soothe and sit with uncomfortable emotions, and so your BF seems to be opting to use you for his benefit but at your expense. I'm glad you got a bit of space after calling him out, but it sounds like it was just a matter of time until things went back to how they'd been. It doesn't sound like your needs and boundaries are being given the same consideration and respect as his. You have a desire to be a good and supportive partner, which is lovely, but it must never be at the expense of your own health. Some people will keep taking whatever you have until you have nothing left, even for yourself. Always look after you first. Establish boundaries, and hold on to them firmly. You are not responsible for someone else's emotions. It is okay to say no. I hope that by keeping that in mind, it will help you start to feel better and more grounded. You already understand you're burnt out and you can identify what's contributing to it. That's a great first step. P.S. Part where he gives you a script and some work to do to get you to be more empathetic, once you stopped the discussion when it became too much, raised a big flag for me. When you break up, is it healthy to delete the other person from all social media and out of your phone? I, 30F, just broke up with this dude, 32M, and when I told him that it was really over for us, I mentioned I was going to delete him from all social media and he told me that I was lashing out. Part of me thinks he said this because he knows I want to work on lashing out/being overly emotional, and it serves him to be able to see what I'm up to in life. But then I got to thinking, is it reactive to want to remove someone you broke up with from your life? Too long didn't read. Is it lashing out to remove someone you broke up with from your social media?